With the NFL draft, it's almost hours away now at this point, we're breaking down the Cowboys' top draft targets for round one. Kind of realistic looks at some of the top names, an attempt at how the Cowboys' big board might look, knowing it's not going to be right because every team's board is different. Also, this was the segment that Dwayne Jackson picked for winning last week's Super Chat battle. Now, if you want my final NFL mock draft for the Dallas Cowboys, the 7-round version, on Wednesday afternoon, help us out by sharing today's video right now. The first thing I'll do here is run this through different tiers of groups of players, spend some time on them. Then at the end, I'll kind of break it down, in terms of ranks as best as possible. First group of players is they ain't going to be there. Tier 1 prospects that aren't going to be there. J.J. McCarthy's not a Tier 1 prospect for me, but he's not going to be there, so we'll just put him in there. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Caleb Williams, Joe Alt, Rome Odunze, Drake Maye, Brock Bowers, Dallas Turner. Especially those first 8 names, plus Jayden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy. You could also call them the felony board, where the only way they get to you at 24 is if a felony had been committed. Daniels and McCarthy. Maybe there's a Will Levis 2.0 scenario that makes you reevaluate. But if those guys get to you at 24, it means you probably don't want to take them because something went terribly wrong. All right, this next batch of 4, I'm going to call it the offensive line dreaming group. Players I don't think would be there. That's Taliese Fuaga out of Oregon State, Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, or Fashanu, excuse me, J.C. Latham for Alabama, and Troy Falatanu out of Washington. Now, of note with Troy, Albert Bree reporting some teams flagged his knee. So maybe he is in for a little bit of a draft slide. Maybe he's not. He was higher on this list originally, and he's higher on my board that was finalized before that news came out. But I would be a little surprised if any of these guys got to you at 24. If they did, whether they're your left tackle or your left guard, I think they could do all those those holes or play those positions. I think you'd be excited about having that guy available. I'm just not going to get my hopes up for it. The defensive surprise category. Quinyon Mitchell, Byron Murphy, Terrion Arnold, Jared Verse, Latu. Top defensive prospects who I think aren't going to be there for you in round one. But if they were, maybe you start to reconsider and go, well, this is just the best player on my board. And that's the route we choose to go down. And we say, we'll take the best player in the end. 3 names here are on the top realistic offensive line targets. They may not be there, or there's something wrong with them. First up is Graham Barton out of Duke. And if Barton is there at 24, I don't know if he will. A team like the Dolphins or Steelers and maybe Philadelphia picking in front of you, all of those teams could very much be in the market for the left tackle turned left guard or center. So that would be very much a area to monitor. But if Barton is there, given the athletic ability, given the position flex, I think Dallas would have a tough time trading away from him. So if he's there, that would be my guess on the pick. But it is a guess because who knows if he's going to be there. Who do you think the Dallas Cowboys end up drafting in round one? Go ahead and sound off for me in the comment section of today's video. Next up for me is Amarius Mims. And he was, to my knowledge, not a pre-draft visit for the Dallas Cowboys. So again, that will raise some concerns. Has some medical stuff that must be vetted to a certain extent. Similar boats, especially for the next guy on this list, but also kind of sort of Graham Barton, who missed time with injury this past year. I can play left tackle. He also might not be there for you, but that'd be like my personal favorite pick. Doesn't mean the Cowboys feel the same way, though. Jackson Powers-Johnson is next up here. And this one is a big asterisk. We saw last year the Cowboys bring in a variety of players, including but not limited to Darnell Washington. And despite bringing Washington in for a pre-draft visit, they did not take him. And the reason being was medical. And there are concerns right now about the medical for Jackson Powers-Johnson. has, I have heard, an alleged hip tear. Issue in general is a concern there. Hamstring pull at the Senior Bowl, groin issues this year as well, multiple concussions over the course of his NFL career, or collegiate career, or at least concussion concerns. So that's kind of like, hey, asterisks on that front. If the medical checks out, I can argue he's the best center in the class. But he might not feel the same way as me. The Cowboys might not feel that way. So asterisks, but a clear interest player from that perspective. All right, the fallback offensive line targets who could also be trade down candidates here. Now, over another name or two we'll get to, I'll give the edge to Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU because we know he was a 30 visit. There are maybe 1 or 2 or 3 unknown 30 visits, but we know for a fact this is one of them. He tested really, really well. He checks off all the size stuff the Cowboys like. He's got long arms, but he's also kind of raw. I think the hand placement gets off at points. At times, he doesn't see things that well. He's also 21. He's played both sides of the offensive line as well. So unlike another tackle we will get to, I trust him playing on the left side a little bit more. Cowboys did not meet with Zach Frazier out of West Virginia, but I would be all for that pick, especially in a trade down scenario. Like, trade down to 31, take your center. Sound familiar? Frazier is, if you want some more toughness on your offensive line, if you want a little bit more dog in your offensive line, that's Zach Frazier. The athletic ability is more good than great, but he is intelligent. And I think you could use that in the center. So Frazier in the end checked in at 31 overall on my board. So I would not be upset. Sorry, 34. If they took him, especially in a trade down scenario. Tyler Guyton, this is one of the prospects I struggled the most with. I get the intrigue. Really great athlete, moves well, upside off the charts, but he also just is raw. You don't find almost 6'8" people that are 322 and 34-inch arms very frequently. It's a high upside offensive tackle, but you need to be a little bit patient because there are downsides to be worried about here. Footwork and leverage were not very good too often. I think the feel for playing offensive line is not great. In a normal offensive class, this guy could easily go top 20. He still might. But in this loaded class, he's just a second-round grade for me. He cracked my top 32, but that's because once I get to the top 25, I don't like my early round 2 picks that much. I got to put somebody there, but I'm not in love with them, if that makes sense. Jordan Morgan out of Arizona, who I think specifically for Dallas is probably even a little bit lower than I would have him. I like Jordan Morgan. It's a second-round grade for me. He's in my top 40. I think he's overall a very quality prospect, but especially when it comes to drafting tackles. The Cowboys' history is they really want 33 and more 34-inch arm guys, and Jordan Morgan's under that. However, they liked Matthew Bergeron a lot last year, and I get Matthew Bergeron vibes from Jordan Morgan. Some other non-offensive line fallback options here. Brian Thomas Jr., which might just be a stand pat and take one there. I think they're okay with Nate Wiggins' lack of size. Edgerrin Cooper is like your worst-case scenario. Screw it. No one wanted to trade up. There's no good lineman. We'll take our top-rated linebacker this year. They also met with him pre-draft. I'd love to give him in round 2. I am a huge fan of Kool-Aid McKinstry, even with the foot fracture. He is a top 25 player for me, so he'd be among the best on the board when the Cowboys on the clock. I think he'd be a great fit for Mike Zimmer. Medical more, maybe the Cowboys aren't interested there. They brought in Darius Robinson for a visit. That's a tough player for me. Real tweener vibes. I love Johnny Newton. I'm not sure Dallas will. Chop Robinson is, again, I got a second-round grade on him, but I don't know where to put him because the first step is unreal. It's the rest of it makes you go, I don't know. And then Cooper DeJean, kind of like inside my top 30, and I don't know if he's a great fit for the Cowboys, but I wanted to mention him there. Now, we'll get to the ranked big board here momentarily, but the official NFL draft hat, the one you will see Cowboys players wearing when they are picked, is available at chatsports.com/Cowboys draft hat. It's via Fanatics. Check out the link because you can kind of see it more on the Navy hat than the smoke hat, where it's kind of got a little 3D effect. I think you'll want to zoom in and look at it and not just kind of rely on your phone screen to see it there. So go check it out. Chatsports.com/Cowboys draft hat. Link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. So then, let's rank the Cowboys big board. We'll go quick here. As best as I think the Cowboys might have it, knowing full well it's not going to be right. There are things that are wrong, but I'm trying here. And plus, they'll take guys off for medical and stuff we didn't even know about. Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, Joe Alt, Odunze, Dallas Turner, them boys ain't going to be there. I think because they brought Taliese Fuaga in for a visit, probably means he's high on their board. So I'll put him at 6 over somebody like Brock Bowers, who he's not going to get there. Much like the Kyle Pitts, Penn Sewell conversation, where people are like, could Pitts fall? And I was like, he's not going to, but the tackle might, and he almost did. Maybe Fashanu fits that mold this year. And again, I don't think he's going to be there. I could see him getting out of the top, maybe 13, 14 picks. He's very high on my board. Plug him in at left tackle. That is my pipe dream selection, but I think it is more of a pipe dream. I'll put J.C. Latham at 9 here over Troy Fashanu with, again, emphasis on the offensive lineman because that's the bigger concern right now for Dallas. In part because of the now knee issue for Fashanu that has been reported by Albert Breer, that it got flagged, and if he slides, that's why. Maybe he doesn't slide at all. Seattle stands out as a good fit for him. I'm curious where Latham goes. Could go to the Chargers if they trade down. That would make a lot of sense for people, I think. But I think you're playing both at guard or maybe Fashanu at left tackle. I don't think Latham can play left tackle. I think Fashanu could, though. So will the Cowboys go offensive line in round 1? That's certainly the expectation. Maybe the Cowboys surprise everybody. Y for yes, N for no. Some other players, again, I don't think most of these guys get there. I'm going to go Quinyon Mitchell here at number 11. I think he's off the board top 20 pretty easily there. Graham Barton is going to be 12 for me. And the last couple years, I think I had a good feel for what the pick would have been if the guy they had wanted had gotten there. I think if McDonald had been there, they would have picked him. That was my final mock draft pick. If Sir Tanner Horn was there, that was going to be picked over Micah Parsons. Didn't happen that way. I would wonder if because of the way they like offensive linemen position flex and more, if Barton ends up being the guy and could maybe slide, because if teams don't think he can play tackle, it's not going to be as valuable. Now, maybe you get sniped by the Steelers or something. That wouldn't be a surprise either. And as long as the medical checks out, knee sprain, had shoulder surgery, I would not be mad at this pick at all. I don't think Byron Murphy gets to you, but he is higher on this version for the Cowboys board because he was a known pre-draft visit. So I will lean more on those in these ranks here. Terrion Arnold at 14. Again, I doubt he's there, but top-tier corner. Amarius Mims, I wouldn't be shocked if they went in a different direction because they might not know if he could play left tackle. So Mims and a couple other guys on this list, I'm going to asterisk. And also there are medical concerns with Mims. He's missed a bunch of time, in part because of injuries. So that has to be vetted as well. He would be higher on this list had he been a pre-draft visit. The final Cowboys mock draft will come on Wednesday, and we will be live for the entire NFL draft on Thursday and Friday and Saturday. Hit that sub button so you don't miss out. Jared Verse here at 16 because, I'm plugging in. I got to find the spots for the defensive guys at some point. And I don't think he's going to be there either. And I didn't want this to be all the offensive linemen in a row. The next two players on this list, led by Jackson Powers-Johnson and Latu, carry large asterisks, medical concerns. Does Jackson Powers check out medically? If he does, would not be surprised at all if he was the selection, and I'd be all for it. If the medicals don't check out, Dallas might pass on him, just like they did with some players last year. Latu, again, medical concerns there. If he's available, probably means the medical didn't check out for some teams. You could even flip Brian Thomas and Jared Verse if you wanted to. I don't think he's going to be there, but that is one to consider. I think if the Cowboys were doing a pure board and not adjusting as they very well might for positional need, I could see Nate Wiggins being pretty high up on that list. I think he fits a lot of the things Mike Zimmer likes in a corner despite being pretty damn skinny, but there's man coverage ability, there's size, speed, outside like height and length to an extent as well, but not the weight. Speed and effort. I think that Zimmer would like him. And if the O-line is picked over, I think there is a universe that exists where Wiggins is the top player on their board, if he's there. 21, and we'll do 22 together here. Kingsley Suamataia and Tyler Guyton. I have Guyton narrowly ahead of him on my over Kingsley on my actual board. I gave the slight edge to Suamataia because we know he's a 30 visit. And that's not to say Dallas will only draft players on their 30 visit list, but they normally do, at least in round 1 in particular. So I'm going to give, in terms of the Cowboys, and this is, I think, ideally a trade down scenario anyway, I'll put Suamataia on there. So pick an offensive tackle. KS for Kingsley Suamataia or TG for Tyler Guyton. Both fit the raw, athletic, but need help offensive tackles. Another offensive lineman is Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. I love his game. I think, again, this is probably, I think a lot of these guys on, like this section right here, from 21 to 24, which also includes Edrin Cooper, and even 25, which is Darius Robinson as well. That's the linemen we wanted were gone, or we had them off the board medically, so we traded down, or we had to pick somebody because there were no good trade offers. Like, that's what this group might be here. Maybe the order probably ends up being different a little bit, but, like, that is what I think the, like, bad scenario for 24 options are. Tackles are gone. You know, top players are gone. There were only 4 quarterbacks. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. That's the order they end up going in. Jordan Morgan, 26 for me. Arm length, I think, is a negative for Dallas, but I do like his game. The next 2 names I am big fans of. Kool-Aid McKinstry and Johnny Newton, 27, 28. They'll be high on my board, and they might be among the top defensive players. Chop Robinson, number 29 overall. Again, the freaky athlete, but where's your production? It scares me. Kind of like a Dafe way, but I don't love, once you have like the top 20 players, I'm like, I am anxious here, and Robinson fits that mold. Finally, I'll throw in Cooper DeJean. We're 30 picks with none of the top 4 quarterbacks on here, so you'll have other options instead. And maybe there's a surprise guy. It's like a Patrick Paul or something wild that we did not see coming. On the surprise point, by the way, and it was like, well, what if Penix is there? A conversation you should have in your war room, because you don't have your quarterback under contract for next season. In fact, no quarterbacks under contract for next season. But the Cowboys have shown no interest. They've not met with anybody that we know of. So, and that's very much against their MO, especially if you're drafting a quarterback in the first round and you don't meet with them. That'd be kind of wild. So I would be very surprised if they took a quarterback in round 1. I'd be shocked, and then I'd support that guy because that would be your new franchise QB.